Shout out to the fam. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate the fam for being in this episode of the show. Much love, BigQ representing the Who Dat Nation, man, on this one. Big ups to the fam. Welcome. You're now rocking with the Sports Coma with BigQ and the guys, where we have intense, entertaining, educating, and enlightening sport talk from your favorite sports fam. Shout out to you guys for being in the stream. Salute to the Black and Gold Nation. Salute to our Patreon champions and YouTube membership family. We up in this thing. Hope you guys are remaining safe during this cold snap hitting the region. Some ices is getting a lot of places are getting a lot of ice. A lot of people are getting a lot of rain. Some getting some places snow in areas. So y'all guys be safe no matter what your mode of transportation. Please be safe. And as long as danger persists, please stay off the road. We don't want to endanger our workers, our rescue workers as well, to go out in conditions that are not favorable unless it's an absolute emergency. So big ups to you guys. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. Man, FanDuel, as you guys can see on the stream, is NFL with the playoff games still remaining, NBA, NHL, college basketball, soccer, WNBA, UFC, and more. You guys can check out the lines on all of the games. As you can see, many different lines right here. As you can see, the Pelicans lines right here. So it's a lot of stuff going on, man. Y'all can feel free to check out FanDuel. Get your bets in at FanDuel. In this episode of the show, man, we're going to kind of go into some breakdowns, man, and kind of talk about a few of the things dealing with this New Orleans Saints in this broadcast. Tyler Shough emerges, his emergence exposed the Saints' biggest flaw, a shortage of explosive playmakers. Shout out to NOLA.com for penning this article, man. And we're going to cover a few news, notes, and items on this broadcast. So y'all feel free to hit the like button as we get going in this broadcast. So anyway, as we get it going, man, the New Orleans Saints seem to have found their next quarterback, and they need playmakers around them, right? Tyler Shough had his success. He throwing up ChrisOlave. Even JuwanJohnson had a big year. ChrisOlave had a massive year. Don't forget JuwanJohnson had a career year as well, living up to the $10 million a year deal. He got 30 for 3, and he had his biggest season this. And we're going to need this type of production from both Olave and JuwanJohnson, as long as Tyler Shough is the starting quarterback. And even if he wasn't, we need high production from our high-paid players. Wide receiver Devaughn Vele emerged as an important contributor, but general manager Mickey Loomis and Kellen wouldn't be blamed if they conclude the offseason needs more juice heading into the next season, no doubt. With practices for the SeniorBowl next week, the draft season just around the corner, and finding new weapons to boost Tyler Shough's supporting cast could be a top priority. So who could the Saints be looking at coming up? As well as Shough playing down the stretch, the offense lacked the explosiveness that it needed to become one of the league's better units. When Shough took over the starter over the back half of the season, 13.6% of the Saints' completions ended in an explosive, defined as a pass of 16 yards or more. That ranked 17th in the league. For the year, Saints finished with an explosive pass percentage of 2.2, the worst mark in the league. No doubt about it, as a major part of why the Saints were failing was because they weren't stretching the field. It was a lot of underneath stuff. It was a lot of east-west stuff. It was too much of that. And a lot of that could be shared. Like the play calling was suspect. They just wasn't dialing up stuff that went deep. And even when they did go deep, it was unsuccessful to the point where they at stretches just abandoned it. You can't have I ain't gonna say an explosive offense. Things get radically different for you when you don't stretch the field. Defenses know how to adjust to that, and it just becomes problematic. But that's not only way the Saints lack juice either. They dig into the article, and they talked about long drives that stalled. The Saints and Dallas Cowboys led the league in drives of at least 10-plus yards per play with 39, but there was a key difference between the two. The Cowboys had 2 elite wide receivers in CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. They scored 17 of those drives, third most in the NFL. The Saints, they had just 12, putting them in the middle of the pack, tied with 6 teams for the 14th spot. On one hand, says the writer, being able to string together lengthy drives highlights more sharp play calling and quarterback play, but too often the Saints didn't have the difference makers who could finish those long series in the end zone, right? So the Saints ended up kicking 16 field goals on drives that lasted at least 10 plays, the second most in the league. Long drives aren't necessarily a bad thing. The Broncos, Niners, and Texans finished right before the Saints, Cowboys, and Cardinals and still made the playoffs. But breaking up those series every now and then with explosive plays can change the game, and that was what was missing in 2025, of a lack of three-pointers. Throughout the Moore's first season, the coach loved his basketball analogies. Moore wanted his team to play with pace, similar to the Pacers. Quarterbacks were told to take three-pointers and layups, which were basically deep shots or easy completions. But in the analogy, the Saints weren't a very good three-point shooting team. Don't worry, the Pelicans aren't either. Early in the year, the defenses were cautious of Olave and Shaheed beating them over the top, leaving quarterback Spencer to take what was in front of him. That wasn't all the time, though. There was times when I showed on film that those guys were wide open running downfield, and then the man just didn't see him. He was in check down mode. He was checking the ball down too much, throwing it intermediately, and you have to take shots, man. When you're in there and you got to throw the ball deep, you got to risk it. And there were times when you look at the tape, we call it on the show, they wasn't stopping everything going down deep. A lot of time the quarterback just simply didn't see the guy going downfield. He didn't progress. He didn't go through his progressions completely. And that was due to a number of factors, including the poorish offensive line where he was getting smacked around. He was forced to move out of the pocket. So his patience to go through, regardless of what was going on, you got to progress. You might have to speed it up a little bit, but you still have to progress. You have to go through your progressions. Unless, as soon as you snap the ball, the guy on your back, you still got to move on out and you got to keep your eyes upfield, right? But early in this year, defense were cautious of that and beating them over the top, leaving Spencer to take what was in front of him. Shough shows more aggression after taking over, and Olave started to torch defenders anyway. The Saints still didn't hit on deep shots at the rate that Moore have preferred. Now, things changed, obviously, as the season went on, because the offensive line, despite the injuries, started to galvanize. The running game actually helped. A lot of that wasn't with Spencer Rattler early on. There was a struggle fest. Guys were missing blocks. The offensive line wasn't shitty, wasn't giving them a running attack. So it was a lot of stuff going on. Guys were dropping touchdown passes, dropping first down balls. All that was happening early on in the season when that man was the quarterback of the team. And they looked better later on when he took over, because ultimately, guys over and over again, as time, if you keep practicing and these guys getting dozens of practices, sooner or later, something got to click in your head of what plays need to be ran. And ultimately, that's what ended up happening for them. That ended up being a positive for them, right? Shough was excellent on the intermediate throws of 10 and 19 yards with a completion percentage of almost 68%, but he was just 9 of 36 on throws that traveled at least 20 yards through the air, according to Next Gen Stats. That 25% completion rate ranked fifth worst among the 33 qualified passers. Although Shough needs to improve in that area, some data suggests that he could use an additional help, or some help, actually. The rookie was pressured on 47.2% of his deep throws, the seventh highest rate in league. Rattler was above that, facing a pressure of almost 52%, right? So you can see Tyler Shough's pressured rate at 47.2% on his deep throws, which was the seventh highest rate in the league, versus Rattler was about facing a rate of 52%, which was fifth on deep throws. Now, Shough's completion percentage on those throws was 12.5% points worse than expected, behind on the Atlanta quarterbacks Penix and Kirk Cousins when doing it. An explosive passing game is instrumental for the team's success. The Patriots, 18.4% is first. Seattle at almost 17% is third, and the Rams at 16% is sixth. All finished top six in explosive pass play percentage. Those three are playing in the conference championship this weekend, right? So as you could tell, there are situations that occur where the deep ball means a lot, like, because it's demoralizing. When you hit on these passes, man, when you hit on passes of this magnitude, and you start slinging the ball around and you throwing and you're making plays down deep, it demoralizes the defense. It really does. It really galvanizes and energizes the offense when you can attack a team deep and you can hit them with strikes and set it up. And if you can continue to do that consistently, you can be able to take over the game, quiet the crowd, and you can just it's a hurtful thing. So, but the Saints, to be able to improve upon that, they're going to have to invest options into controlling and protecting the quarterback, add wide receivers around them, running backs, and they're just going to have to overall just upgrade the talent level of people around Tyler Shough. That's what it comes back to, right? So, run to nowhere, a strong running game obviously helps a quarterback. The Saints didn't have one in 25. Beyond ranking 28th in rushing yards and 31st in expected points added per rush, there was a lack of explosiveness in the New Orleans rushing attack. Just 8.1% of the Saints' runs went longer than 12. That's crazy, more than 12 yards, which counts as an explosive. That number crept up to about 10.1% when Tyler Shough became the starter because he could scramble, but it was still below the league average of 10.7. That was something that was going on the entire year with the Saints. The Saints had issues running the football because the offensive line was bull crap. It was garbage, right? Interiorly speaking, Tyler was still dealing with injury. Kelvin is a rookie. There was flex in terms of what's going on with the left guard position with Trevor Penning and Dylan Redunce. That was up and down. The center position with McCoy, when he was healthy, he didn't look dominant. Then he got hurt for half the year he was gone. And then Fortner came in the right guard position with Cesar Ruiz, who is a person that has been struggling mightily for over the last 2 years at the right guard position. The depth issue was also something we talked about going into the season. And this is going to be one of the key things that Kellen Moore and Mickey Loomis and the brass look at into this offseason. Number one, if we found the quarterback in Tyler Shough, you're going to have to protect him. You're going to have to invest resources in free agency and improving that. You're going to have to get some guards. You're going to have to get, I wouldn't be mad if you get a couple of them out of free agency. You get maybe one or two of them out of the draft, a couple of linemen out of the draft. You're going to have to upgrade the offensive line. You're going to have to get some not necessarily playmakers, but guys that can help run the ball. You're going to have to get guys that maulers interiorly that can push and force out guys and move guys out so things can happen. That's what it basically comes down to. That's what they're going to have to do. Yeah, it's just the bottom line. So this is good stats because, that's true. Saints running attack sucked. So the Saints had just 5 runs that gained at least 20 yards ahead of the Raiders, Niners, and Chiefs. Shough and Taysom Hill, 2 quarterbacks, accounted for 3 of 5 of those big gains. Devaughn Vele, a 6th-round rookie, and Audric Estime, who didn't receive a carry until December, had the other 2. Elvin Kamara, the normal starter, had his longest run of the season in week 1, an 18-yard touchdown against the Cardinals. Kamara missed the last 6 games of the season with a knee injury. Kendre, a key backup, was lost on October the 19th with a torn ACL. The Saints did not only need a running back with a noticeable burst, but also an offensive line that can create the holes for the runner to sprint through. And this is what it is. When you talk about it, like the passing game was one thing, and they talk about wide receivers, but in order for the Saints to really develop and do and become what we think that they can be, we're going to need help running the football. And like you can get a Jeremiah Love, and you try to put Jeremiah Love behind what the Saints were doing last year, you ain't going to do nothing but get him hurt. You got to be able to provide a lineman that can push, that can get guys, defensive linemen out of the way. You're going to need that. You're going to definitely need that to happen for success to happen on that level. That's just the bottom line. You're going to need that. So outside of that, man, all I can say is, man, this is a focal. This is the focal point for the team. And like I said, man, I think this will be a good thing to do. Man, I tell you, we finally getting that we finally getting on that same level where we need to be in terms of understanding where we are from an offensive line standpoint. If the Saints can get add a few more offensive linemen via the free agency first, and then maybe in a draft, and kind of fortify that thing, then they can, this guy's the limit, because you're gonna have to protect Shough, and you're gonna have to give him a running attack. If you have Tyler Shough back there and you give him access to some time to be able to go through his progressions and define some of these guys, I think things will be excellent. Now, I hear a lot of people want to say, Q, we need some wide receiver help. We can use this, that, and the third. I won't argue with you. I think you're right. We could use all that. We can use upgrades at all these positions. We really can. We can use positional upgrades at wide receiver and all this stuff. We can use some help there. We can use some help behind the tight end. We can use some help in the running attack. No doubt about it, with guys getting hurt. But like I said, you don't have anything unless you have an offensive line. You really don't. With Tyler Shough coming into his second year, you're going to want to have a strong running attack to help out, because you give him a strong running attack and he's already a scrambling running quarterback as well. It'll just add to it. So a key point is, and this is a good article because what it did, it used the statistics to show you from a running standpoint why the Saints need improvement there. And that really is tied just basically to the offensive line. 28th in rushing yards and 31st in expected points added per rush, right? That's something else. 28 in rushing yards. Like I said, people want to talk about the throwing aspect of it, and I ain't mad at you. But in the end, all I can say is, man, listen, we need an interior offensive line really quick. And I think that'll really contribute to what our success can be heading forward. All right, let's jump into it, man. This another article right here. I won't keep you guys very long on this episode of the show. Here's another one: free agency preview. Time to invest some money. The Saints entering a busy offseason, which one could say. The expectation for some selections, juggling which positions. They don't want to risk a draft pick on. They got to figure out what they're going to do with the first round pick. And this is what it said. And this is a common thing, because offensive line, without the lines, you don't have anything. So, that's what this article talks about is entering the season. The plan to move former first round pick Penning to another position. He was traded up out of here, so good riddance to that. Dylan Redunce is not the answer. He going to be gone. So the Saints, what could they do? They're going to have to look at free agency, and there's several players that'll be available in free agency. Depending on how far the Saints want to go in terms of restructuring, they can definitely restructure at a rate where they'll have at least $20+ million. That they can do. At least $20 million they'll have to deal with. If they restructure all those guys, they can get north of $30 million. Like I said, remember last year when the Saints had restructured all those contracts, and what they did after that was just had a bunch of money that was available. Y'all remember that? So, that is something that they can look at and decide to do again. They really could. So the left guard wasn't what was expected. Then the right guard, Ruiz, struggled throughout the games. In 24, Clint Kubiak was the OC. Ruiz thrived in the system and improved. But in 25, Kellen Moore's offense, he took a step back. Then it couldn't get any worse. Star center McCoy went down with a season-ending injury, which added another injury to a growing list. The interior offensive line was not something teams tend, to survive without having. Now, the part about it is when you talk about the Penning, we knew that Dylan Redunce, we knew Penning was a leaky, was going to be a big gamble at the left guard position anyway. He had no training there. They had him at the right guard position. They was just trying to, they were doing their best to try to find a spot for this guy that they didn't want to be labeled as a bust, because they keep picking wrong some of these guys. But we knew that Dylan Redunce had the upper hand, even though they force-fitted Penning in there, and Penning struggled. Penning got hurt. He was in and out of the lineup. Dylan Redunce stepped in there, and Redunce, they tried to do him as a tackle, and that was a bad idea at a guard. He was better, but not good enough for us to say, hey, man, we need to bring Dylan Redunce back, like we talking about bringing Luke Fortner back, right? It's a difference. And then you talk about McCoy. McCoy, at some point, the Saints are going to, and we've heard that from the general manager. He spoke about both Ruiz and about Eric McCoy. At some point, you got to kind of let history guide you a bit, because even though McCoy's injuries are not as bad as Ryan Ramczyk, it's a recent example of a player getting into their years, and then all of a sudden you start seeing them systematically be out of games. Now, missing 2, 3, or even 4 games, you can understand that. But when getting hurt and missing half the season both times, we can't deal with that. 20 missed games in 4 years. I think it's 24-4, something like that. It's a 20 games being missed in the last several years is not going to cut it. At that point, and I think he got 2 years remaining on his contract, Saints going to have to pivot on some stuff. They really are. This can't go on. We got to figure out what to do about the McCoy dilemma. And to me, Luke Fortner fits right on it. Now, you've seen Kellen Moore traded Bink Sanders or not Bink, Big Bink Saunders for the guy, and the Saints won that trade. Okay, so but what Luke Fortner did do is he came in, worked with Tyler Shough. Right, he was the backup. He helped deal with the line moves, all this kind of stuff, and they even had a semblance, somewhat of a running attack toward the back of the season. They helped contribute to the Saints winning games. Right, they really did. They with backup 4th and 5th string running backs and a rookie quarterback scrambling around, and they did a decent job rather, and keeping that thing moving. That's why I said you should bring Luke Fortner back. Fortner should be the guy, unless it's too expensive. He should be the backup, because McCoy cannot be relied upon at that center position. So Cesar Ruiz is a whole nother thing. The Saints are not going to. He was on a trade block this past offseason, and he got no takers. The reason he got no takers is because nobody really wanted Cesar Ruiz, because on film, Cesar Ruiz has a bad technique. His leverage is off. His foot placement is not consistent. His hand placement is inconsistent. It's just he gets beat really easily. He is not an elite level offensive lineman, not even underneath that. And, I think it's time for the Saints to really, I don't think they're going to release him, but I do think the Saints should really consider giving him some competition at that position. I factored this in. I said, listen, the only guys that really have their positions is left tackle Kelvin Banks Jr., right tackle Tali Fuaga, and the center Eric McCoy, fortified by a re-signed Luke Fortner. They're both 2 guard positions. The left guard spot should be whoever they sign in free agency, and the right guard spot should be open up a competition for if they sign a guy in free agency, or even if they draft a guy in a draft somewhere in the 3rd round or something like that, open up competition for Ruiz's spot. Even if they get 2 guards, I wouldn't be mad at them if they went to free agency, got a tier 1 guard for the left position, and then had some competition at the right side against for Cesar Ruiz. Something has to change right there. You got to take the reins off and say, listen, Cesar, we're going to have to want you to compete for this position and let the best man win. Open up competition at the right guard spot. That's what that is what needs to happen, right? And then you can go about the business, but we'll see what the Saints do, because I think they'll address at least one of these positions and add a couple of offensive linemen via free agency, and a couple of more when the draft come around. That's what I'm looking at. All right. Also, offensive line free agents. This team could target. Saints are good at tackle. Kelvin Banks played at a very high level as a rookie. Tali Fuaga, when healthy, was excellent. Starting left guard, if the Saints are ready to invest most of the spending money on the line, there is 1 home run answer. That would be an upgrade. They mentioned Bills left guard David Edwards will be turning 29 before free agency and would heavily upgrade both the Saints pass and run block options. And yeah, David Edwards, there's many articles that are attaching him to the Saints, and what it does do, instead of the Saints taking like a patient approach to building the team up, if you're bringing back Demario Davis and Cam Jordan, you're bringing those guys back, you're going to accelerate the process. You want to accelerate it and get to winning as fast as you can. Now, you've seen teams like New England. They're not exactly the New Orleans Saints. You've seen the head coach moved. He went from Vrabel. He went from the Titans to New England. He understood the New England culture. Mike Vrabel is one of the best Patriot linebackers that they ever had outside of guys like Willie McGinnis and I forgot the man. What's his name? The linebacker, all Patriot from he usually be on ESPN. I can't. His name escapes me right now. Teddy Bruschi. So guys like that, man. But Vrabel was in that championship ilk, and he went back to his culture in terms of the Patriot way. And those guys, he was able in 1 year to take them a team that was underachieving. So they had talent. They added a few pieces there, and they had a guy to believe in them, gave them and they had a solid draft too. Travion Henderson, working with Drake May, and you added the wide receiver and a few other pieces there, and what they did on defense, and you've seen them take off, man. You've seen them take off, and they won game from the Super Bowl. So I'm not saying that's going to happen for the Saints by any stretch of the imagination. But what I'm saying is, if you go into free agency and if you open up your bank account and you sign a David Edwards, who's going to be a very sought after left guard in free agency, that kind of sets the trend that, hey, man, a few pieces here or there and we'll be fine. Like, both those tackles are good. You fortify, McCoy with Fortner. You add a left guard there if it's David Edwards or the next guy. You bring him there, and then you have another piece of competition for Cesar Ruiz. And by all indications, if things shake the way you want it, you have improvement and an upgrade on the line. Because you have to be able to protect Tyler Shough, and you have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You got to give Tyler Shough a running attack. You have to give him. Imagine what the Saints' offense looks like with Tyler Shough has a running attack, and they have access to the full play action playbook, and what he can do back there, throwing the ball downfield. He did all that without the Saints having a steady, respected play action. He was still able to get the ball up the field. So if you can get a man we could be looking upon a lot of stuff. So to me, the Saints don't really have a lot of needs that they need to fill. Like the offensive line is a big one. Getting the offensive line and getting that running attack together to help Tyler Shough. And perhaps you go into free agency, you get him a vet wide receiver to compete, because outside of having guys like ChrisOlave and, he's only the really well-known guy you have that. Now you can bring in a veteran to push the rum. Not a tier 1 guy, but maybe a tier 2 guy to compete and push the rum. But outside of that, man, what else are you looking at? We have to get the offensive line together. So David Edwards would make sense, but he's not going to work for cheap. A former Super Bowl champion for the Rams has been competing in the playoffs for years. Currently, Spotrac Edwards is projected to get around $20 million a year. So, this is going to be interesting for the Saints. Now, moving on to the center position, this one is pretty easy to fix. Bring back Fortner. I agree. When McCoy went down, Fortner stepped in. He was a good short-term fix. If McCoy injuries become an issue, invest in depth. Yeah, and I think this is something, unless another team offers Luke Fortner a deal that will make him a starter somewhere. You never know, but I think Fortner should come back. He's at least 3 or 4 New Orleans Saints players that have the right to come back based on their performances. Luke Fortner, to me, is the number 1 guy. Outside of Cam Jordan and Demario Davis, we know that those guys are going to come back. But outside of those guys, Luke Fortner is there. Jonah Williams is there. You talk about Bullard is there. Those guys deserve the right to come back and try again with the Saints, right? So now, right guard wise, there are a few top tier options like Edwards, but the Saints can still get an upgrade. Some guards that stand out: John Simpson, Elijah Vera Tucker, and Ed Ingram. Each player has some drawbacks, but will still be upgrades at the right guard position. Now, if the Saints hit free agency, family, and the Saints sign 2 starting level guards, that would be like, wow. If you can sign, because the reality is, The Saints still have to find their sixth offensive lineman, right? They thought it was Dylan Reduns. So at some point this offseason, the Saints are going to spend some money on a couple of offensive linemen in free agency, no doubt about it. The left guard position, and maybe they can find a right guard to compete with the likes of Cesar Ruiz, and they'll be less. Ed Ingram does have some issues. Elijah Vera Tucker has injury issues. Those guys are there. But, getting the left guard and getting some help there as well. Perhaps you get a sixth offensive lineman in free agency as well. So you sign the left guard, then you get a tackle. The tackle maybe can play both tackle spots or what have you. And then you can approach the guard position like the backup guard in the draft, like later on in the draft, maybe third or fourth round. You'll have a good guard that'll fall for you that you can put in the competition with Cesar Ruiz, right? If you want to go that route. So we'll see how it all works, man. Then again, maybe perhaps the Saints, will kind of, they did a bunch of trades last year. And I think a lot of times they did the trades last year because I don't think Kellen Moore knew what his team really needed. Now, we were saying it in preseason and in off season, we were doing that and saying that because we knew the team. We knew what the team needed. We knew who these players were. We had the scouting reports on these guys. We knew how they would perform. We talked about them needing size. They went into before the regular season with no tall wide receivers. They had Brandon Cooks out there. We knew Brandon Cooks wouldn't work out. Not because we have a crystal ball. He just doesn't fit what you're doing. I mean, he's a speedy guy, yeah, but you need size there. You need guys. And, all these guys are 6 feet tall guys. No, you got to have a big guy. So eventually he did pull off the trade before the regular season started. But going through training camp, that was something that just looked to be that he didn't see. So he's definitely, he being Kellen Moore is definitely smarter to the identity of his team and what he needs going into year 2 than he was when he arrived. That's for certain. If all you have to do is look over your team to see where you can perform, and all you're doing is looking at the offensive side and you're trusting Staley, because Staley knew what he needed. Staley was remember we talked about this. Staley went and got Chris Rump II. He got Jonah Williams. He got Bullard, and he added a few other pieces. So he was just lining them up and bringing them in. They got Julian Blackmon. They re-signed Julian Blackmon this year to add to the secondary room because Blackmon knows the system. So there was a lot of more. There was a pluses, and then Isaac Yiadom more of a minus there. And I think the Saints will do something where they restructure his contract, or he might outright be a cut, and the Saints go in a different direction. But the defense, Staley knew his defense, no doubt about it. But the offense will improve. Now, the biggest part of it too is the special teams, and I'm gonna do a special show on the special teams coming up later on in the week where we talk about the special teams. Things that's going on with the Saints and whether or not what they'll do in the offseason or if they'll do anything at all to approach this situation. All right. Y'all hit the like button as we keep this thing going, man. And this is an article right here, man, just to put up on screen right here. This is one from Saints Wire, and it's talking about Tyler Shough. Says Gayle Benson loved his Hollywood costume. Now, I posted a picture on the comment section about Tyler Shough and his Hollywood costume, I said, Freudian slip. But y'all know who know. I'm gonna just refer to it as his Hollywood costume because he showed up and I showed the picture of it with thoughts, and there had people that was kind of upset about it. I'm like, what you upset about? This man did this and he put this out here of him at a party dressed like Gayle Benson. Gayle Benson said she loved it. And they like, oh, it's cute, take that down. For the Falcon people said, guess what, bro? I think the Falcon people got internet, brother. I'm just telling you straight up. The Falcon people got internet, brother. They don't live on an island somewhere. But this is what the article says, man, and let's just touch on it, man. Let's just get right on to it. Tyler Shough been a busy man. Saints quarterback is set down for interviews with teammates Cam and Teron and all these other folks. And Shough's latest stop was getting on, shout out to Tyrann Mathieu on his podcast, In the Bayou. Big ups to that brother. And it's a great conversation, but one of the best moments was the story behind Shough's Halloween costume tribute to Gayle Benson. Linebacker Danny Stutzman shared a photo on Instagram from the team's rookie Halloween costume contest, dressed as the orange tracksuited villain from the 2010 animated film Despicable Me, and quarterback Hunter Decker's wearing Will Ferrell's basketball uniform from the 2008 comedy film Semi-Pro. Shough was a wig. Shough wore a wig, a gold blazer, black dress, pearl necklace with matching earrings to copy Benson's look. She gave it her stamp of approval. She said, I had to find size triple. Now he said, Shough said, I had to find triple X everything. It was actually great. She loved it. She texted me about it multiple times. It was like her favorite thing. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. It just goes back to, don't take yourself too seriously. We're having fun. And this is what Tyler Shough did. And people seen Shough. A lot of people didn't like the fact that he was dressed up like Gail Benson, but that's what the hell he did. It's good that Shough was such a great sport about this, but it also goes on to show you just how strong the support he's getting from ownership. A few months later, Shough had been named the starter and won back-to-back games. Benson told it's good that Shough, it says, but it's good that Shough was such a great, hold on here, fam. He was such a great about this, but it also goes to show just how strong the support he's getting from the ownership. A few months later, after Shough had been named the starter and won back-to-back games, Benson told WFAB's reporter Jacques Doucette at a charity event that I love the quarterback. He's great. He's awesome. There's a lot to be said for having her in your corner. Hopefully it means she'll open up to the checkbook and get Shough more help and free agency. I assure you she will. I assure you she will. She will open up the checkbook for Tyler Shough, and that's just because the Saints need to win games. But outside of that, man, y'all guys, what are y'all thoughts? Put it in the chat, because it is what it is, and we need to get the dubs. The bottom, the Saints going to get the dubs because they understand what this is. They understand that Tyler Shough is the future of the team, that he's the franchise handpicked guy, that the team will now focus and lock around him and will build resources around him. Guy had a historic run for his rookie campaign for the Saints. I don't know if there's if that ever been the case in any other franchise before, we had a rookie that come in and win them kind of games. But in terms of the New Orleans Saints, there's never been a situation where you had a guy that came in and he had a winning record. He went 5-4. It could have done better than that. He could have done better than that. He really could. He could have won the Dolphins game. Should have been a win. They had a drop touchdown pass. The Falcons game could have been a win if we'd had some more help at the receiver level. So it could have been a lot better. His stats, and not only that, but the completion percentages were ridiculous. This guy was completing percentages ridiculous amounts. So at the end of the day, he commanded the huddle. He in his second year, and his temperament going into this, like, man, we hadn't done anything. We finished last in the division, and people are excited about it because people are happy to see a winning product. That's all the shit is, man. You see, that's all it is. Good football wins people. Even if you're not winning, if you're in there competing, I've said this many times and I'll continue to say it. If you're winning, if you're in there and even if you're not winning games, but if you're in there competing and you're giving it your all and you're just falling short, if you play with that amount of energy and that level of temperament, you'll win a great majority of the time. Then you will lose. You might meet a couple of teams that will probably outdo you because they want it a little bit more. But if you're giving it your all every game, more than likely you're going to win a great deal of games. That's the bottom line. But what we've been seeing in New Orleans is we've been seeing trash football. We've been seeing bad movements. We've been seeing a lot of running from accountability. That's why Mickey Loomis is catching all that smoke of what was going on. And he pivoted after the Who That Nation forced Gail Benson to fire Dennis Allen because Mickey wouldn't have done it on his own. So after we got him on up out of here and he made the correct hire with Kellen Moore, and Kellen got the QB, and things look good now. And now they're in a good place. Just keep continuing to do the things you did in 2025, which was the draft process. They had a beautiful draft. Let's see if we can build one in 2026. Well, that's not, get the right people to fit on our offensive line and do not have any visions or not visions, but rather looking at a position and saying we're fine there, as opposed to you're not. Like, I'm talking about the right guard spot with Cesar Ruiz. These people denied that Cesar Ruiz thing for years until the voices became too far off to the point where they had to acknowledge what we were talking about with the Cesar Ruiz and how bad his play has been. So, we'll see what they do in free agency. We know they ultimately might look at the left guard spot. Hopefully, I know that at some point they'll address the sixth offensive lineman, try to get a sixth offensive lineman tackle. I knew Akeem Richards is still here. Xavier Truss is there. So we'll know what kind of position those guys fit in. Other guys coming back from injury, we'll see where they are. But the Saints still need to add more additions to the line to help the running attack. And then once we do that, whatever skill positions you guys want to run with, feel free and have at it, right? Anyway, man, that's all I got for y'all on this broadcast of the Coma. Feel free to hit the like button. And remember, man, this broadcast is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel, man, for all your betting needs, everything's available on FanDuel. NFL, NBA, NHL, college basketball, soccer, WNBA, Major League Baseball, UFC is all available at FanDuel. So get your bet in at FanDuel app, or go to FanDuel.com, wherever you get FanDuel. Just hit the Google bot; it'll bring you right to it. So anyway, that's what I got for y'all today, man. Y'all feel free to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. By all means, feel free to share the show on your social media feed. BigQ in here representing the mighty Who Dat Nation, man. Listen, I shall return later on, man, and with more great Saint content. But y'all do me a service, man. Hit the like button, share the show, share it on social media. Don't matter if it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, don't matter. Take the Coma with you. With that being said, much love, salute, and I'm out at you on next one. Peace.
Hey, New Orleans! Whether you're catching up on Saints news at Jackson Square, checking Pelicans scores in the Garden District, or staying updated on LSU while grabbing coffee in the French Quarter, there's one place that keeps you connected to everything that matters in our city. From Bourbon Street to the Superdome, from Preservation Hall to the Riverfront, New Orleanians are staying in the know with thewhodatdaily.com. Your daily source for Saints, Pelicans, LSU, and all the sports, music, and culture that makes our city special. At work downtown, at a game in the Dome, or just relaxing by the Mississippi, wherever life takes you in the Big Easy, you can stay connected. Because when you're from New Orleans, you don't just live here. You stay in the NO. That's stay in the know. Visit thewhodatdaily.com and never miss what matters most to Who Dat Nation.
Welcome to the Pro Shop, where we create authentic NOLA-inspired clothing for men, women, and children. From Saints jerseys to Pelicans gear, everything's crafted right here in New Orleans. Whether you're shopping the Pro Shop, the Pel Shop, or the Pro Shop Kids, we've got your whole family covered with genuine merchandise that represents our city's spirit. Check for links in the description section below or in the